So I'm going to stand here uncomfortably for a certain degree of time until my clock says 11, assuming my clock is correct. There may be people on LinkedIn looking at me now saying I'm crazy, which is entirely possible. 10, thanks, Kayla. 10:59. Hey, it's close to 11. Yay, go time. Aloha. Happy Friday, everybody. Glad to see you. Well, I don't see you, of course. I will see you if you raise your hand, if you chat, you say hi. I'm Malcolm. I'm the host of the CDO Matters podcast, and this is our annual monthly installment of CDO Matters Live. Hey, check it out. We have swag. How cool is that? I picked these up for the first time yesterday while I was in Atlanta at our corporate office. Thank you to Kayla for ordering them. They're pretty cool, pretty awesome. I really like the color. It's kind of a seafoamy green kind of thing, which is maybe appropriate for somebody like me who lives at the beach, but still a cool color regardless. Hello, everybody. Happy Friday. Let's see if there's anybody out there. Looking at the chat, say hi. Please feel free to say hi. Where's everybody joining from? We usually do this at the beginning, kind of roll call-y type stuff. Thanks for coming out today. I hope everybody is excited about their weekend. I kind of am, oddly, because I really don't get much of a weekend. Tiny violin time. Play your tiny violins, because I will be on a plane tomorrow heading towards London for the Gartner Data and Analytics Summit, which is happening all of next week in the city of London, and I'm excited about that. It's going to be a great week. Looking forward to meeting with folks who are coming to the event. So if you are coming to the Gartner Data and Analytics Summit next week in London, we have a booth. So make your way into the exhibitor hall. We don't bite, promise. I certainly don't. Come say hi. I'll be at our booth mostly. I will be trying to squeeze in some sessions here and there, as I always do. Great thing about Gartner now, especially now, everybody has an app. They've got an app. But they do replay a lot of their things after the fact. So after the last Gartner event in Orlando, I caught, I don't know, easily 15 presentations. And that's what, that's how I know what kind of some of the key themes were of the event, like AI and governance and others. So there is an opportunity to catch a lot of presentations after the fact if you're not doing it and you're focused more on networking, which is what I'm going to be focused on next week. And if you're there, come out, say hi. Would love to see you in person. Would love to have a chat. Maybe you've got specific questions and you're too shy to post them here on LinkedIn Live. Either way, it would be great to see you in London. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, out in the Excel Center. You may or may not be familiar with it. It is kind of Docklands, just a little bit beyond Canary Wharf. So for a lot of you in Central, it may be a little bit of a haul. But there is very good rail connections. I think it's the DNR? Docklands, or DLR, Docklands Light Railroad. The DLR goes there, and the DLR is, you can connect, I think, at Tower Bridge, a few other places. Elizabeth Line gets close, but I don't think it gets quite there. And you do have to make a jump over to the Docklands rail line. Pretty impressive, huh? For this guy who lives in Florida, who's giving like tube instructions for next week. But I want you to come out. Would be great to see you. Hello. Hey, Kunal from the ATX, the weird and wonderful city of ATX, where I lived for 20 years. I love Austin. I rave about Austin. People are probably like, hey, dude, stop gushing about Austin. But it's a great city. Mind the gap. Exactly right, Kayla. Mind the gap. Indeed. Victor Escobar, greetings from NYC. I was in NYC last week. I was in New York City twice over the last month. So I may not necessarily be at the top of my game today, folks, because I'm on week 5 of 6 weeks straight of travel. I am here in my cave on the east coast of Florida today, thankfully. But I've been all over. Started a month and a half ago in Data Universe in the greatest city in the world, in New York City, where I was the first week of May, and continued on. I went from New York. I spent a few days in my beloved hometown of Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. Then I went on to Seattle for a few days doing some stuff with Microsoft, filming some promotional stuff, which was really cool. From there, I went on to Chicago and then back to New York, Atlanta. Yeah, fun stuff of a traveling data evangelist like yours, truly. But yeah, did get to spend some time in New York twice over the last month. Springtime's a great time to go, or early summer's a great time to go. Well, anytime's a good time to go in New York. So thanks for joining today, Victor. Thanks for joining, Kunal. If you've got specific questions, please let us know. I answer questions for a living. It's kind of what I do. We're going to talk today about what I would call a next generation data and analytics organization. I looked back at a lot of my LinkedIn posts over the last year and a half. And if we're not connected on LinkedIn, well, we should be at this point. But please, if we're not, let's connect. But I look back at a lot of my posts on LinkedIn. A lot of them were about kind of how to structure an analytics organization. What are some of the key roles that I see as missing? But I really wasn't doing kind of a holistic view of it. I was just kind of doing onesie twosie. Hey, you should think about this role. Hey, you should think about this role. So today we're going to take a little bit more of a holistic view of what I see is the optimal data and analytics organization for, let's just call it an AI-enabled future, because AI is taking over everything. And I think there's an opportunity to improve how we manage a data function. And we'll talk about that today. This was what I'm going to share today was very much a kind of the genesis of my conversation today was a chat that I had that I recorded a couple of weeks ago with the incredible Jordan Morrow, aka the godfather of data literacy, who's become a friend of mine now. I am critical of some of the aspects of data literacy. I don't like the word literacy. I think we could do a better job with the word. But besides that, even though I'm critical, Jordan, being the amazing human that he is, has kind of befriended me. And we speak often now. I interviewed him for the CDO Matters podcast, which will be coming out in a few months. Not a few months, maybe a couple of weeks, actually. Not a few months. Why did I say months? Probably within a couple of weeks. Jordan and I had a fantastic conversation about kind of the org of the future. So this will be a little bit of a teasing of that conversation. I'm going to share my views today. And if you tune into the podcast in a couple of weeks, I think it's actually going to be a couple of weeks, you'll get Jordan's perspectives on a lot of this. And he's got some really fresh and interesting perspectives around a number of key roles that are mainly, I would argue, lacking in most data functions today. So kind of wrap that all up. I've been posting things on LinkedIn, onesie twosie. Had a great conversation with Jordan Morrow that will be released in the podcast in a couple of weeks related to an analytics function of the future. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. Of course, we can talk about anything that you want to talk about. So again, if you've got specific questions, let me know. Checking out messages, looking at people online. Hello, Victor, Oksana, Steve, Rodney. Hi, Brandon. I know you. Hi, Zarna. Glad you could make it. Sorry, I'm just kind of checking out who's on. But yeah, let's talk about the org of the future. Or maybe even now. It doesn't have to be the future. It could be now. I should share my screen. This is always fun, trying to make my screen share work. And what tiny little button at the bottom do I need in order to share a screen? I want to share a window. Okay. Drum roll. Are you ready? Let's see if I got the right one, the right screen. All right, come on, PowerPoint. Come on. Boom. All right, it worked. Yay. I don't know why I'm always so impressed with myself every time I make it work. Let me get rid of a few things so we can make things a little bit bigger on the screen. Yeah, that'll work. All right. So these, of course, are my perspectives. There's nothing written anywhere to suggest that, I hold magic beans when it comes to org design and org structure. But I have run a data function. I have run an IT function. I've consulted to literally hundreds, if not thousands, of companies. And I know that sounds like a little bit of a stretch, but I was a Gartner analyst. So I talked to companies all day, every day for years. about these things. So I do have some unique insights here. Over on the left-hand side, okay, so is this a certain size company? I don't know, probably a little bit bigger for sure. I think you could argue that the roles here need to be supported. So even if there's not individual organizations or individual departments, I think that you could make a case that these roles probably need to be supported for most companies over, I don't know, 500 million. I'm just spitballing here, but you increasingly need these functions, regardless of whether or not they're dedicated functions within a CDO organization. You can have conversations about, titles. Are these directors? Are there VPs? It doesn't really matter, right? I'm just kind of picking out what I see as a general title for a mid to large size, relatively large company, not a massive company, but a relatively large company. Assuming that there's a CDO or a CDO equivalent, this is what I see the organization of probably needing to look like. Where we're really going to focus today is not the boxes on the left-hand side: data science, analytics, data management, what I'm calling infrastructure. Now, we could have an interesting argument about, well, do you want to call that data engineering, data operations? I don't care. Data engineering, data operations, something, just the infrastructure, nuts and bolts. That would include ETL integrations. It would include all pipeline maintenance, all those things. We're not really going to talk a lot about it today, data management box either, because these are well-established competencies. We've been doing this stuff a long time, right? Should we have our own department for governance? Should governance be its own thing? Maybe. I see governance as an enabling capability of a broader data management function. But do you want to separate data management from data governance? Maybe, and that's fine. Whatever. But I just kind of broadly look at governance or data management as governance, as quality, MDM, and an architecture component there as well. I think you can make a case that architecture, you could, depending on how big your company is, staff and architecture function under any of these various swim lanes. We're not going to talk about an analytics or a BI function, right? Descriptive, prescriptive, however you want to carve it up. We're not really going to talk about what a data science function of the future will necessarily look like either. The role of individual data scientists, NL, NLP, AI, what the individual swim lanes or individual capabilities would be there. Separate conversation, but we're not going to talk about that today. Let's focus on, is that right? Am I moving right or left on the screen? I don't know. I'm moving to my right, but maybe it's showing up to your left. Let's talk about the red box, because that's where I see the most need and the most opportunity. Some data functions, you could argue some today already have what you could maybe call strategy and innovation. Maybe. Some large companies do have some sort of COE, center of excellence focus, maybe on innovation. But the red box here, I really see being a shared service, right? So all of the individual roles that I've got highlighted here could arguably be supporting everything over on the left-hand side of the organization. So I do view this as a shared service organization within the data and analytics function. Now, I would argue most of these roles, some of them exist today. Yeah, most data organizations have some idea of a business analyst, people who are generally writing requirements. Maybe they're even writing governance policies. Maybe there is some form of project management, probably, maybe the PMO is coming from some other organization under a CTO or a CIO that is matrixed into a data function. But there's a few things here that I would argue are net new and that really, really need to be a focus. If you step back and you said, okay, maybe these things don't exist today, and that's at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe even 6 if you include the director VP level over top of it. You could say, wow, Malcolm, that's 6 roles. You're talking about a major investment. How in the world are we going to justify any of that? Good question. And there would be a significant investment here. But that's why I've got value engineering highlighted in bold red. Because if you were to ask me, out of all of these roles, product managers, product marketers, marketing, business analysts, PMO, if you were to ask me of any of these roles, or including the director, by the way, the director / VP of product management, PMO / innovation, of any of those 6 roles, if there was one that you had to hire, one, it would be a value engineer, the red. Okay. And if there was one person just kind of dangling there, I would actually say that person should be reporting directly to a CDO. Make that person responsible and tier under a CDO before you build out this organization. But what's value engineering, you may ask? Well, it's finally, once and forever and once and for all, figuring out exactly how much value we drive for the organization. It is that simple, right? When we invest in all the things over on the left-hand side, when we invest in data science, when we invest in an analytical infrastructure, when we invest in governance, quality, MDM, whatever it is, when we make those investments, what benefits do they drive for the organization? If we spend a dollar on governance, what is the ROI on that dollar back to the organization? Now, we're not going to get into a prolonged debate about whether or not that's possible, because it is. It is possible to measure these things. It's most certainly possible to model them. We are in this. I love this. We're in the modeling business, and I'm not talking about like runway models. Although in my new shirt, hey, I'm not talking about like runway models, but we build models, right? If we've got a data science function or even an analytics function, chances are pretty good we're focused on or have built or are talking about building models. So we can do this. And by this, I mean quantify the value that we are delivering to our companies. We can do it. Historically, we have not. But I would argue every one of the major ills, every one of the major challenges that we face as data people, every one of the biggest challenges, including things like lack of stakeholder engagement, lack of ongoing investment, underfunding, lack of resources. All of these things are symptoms of us being unable to show our value. They're all symptoms of us being unable to show our value, right? If you struggle to get people engaged in a data governance function, right? If you struggle to get funding, if you struggle to get your C-level executives online to what you're doing, if you're struggling because you feel like you don't have a data-driven culture, if you're struggling because people don't understand the value of data, if you're struggling because people are doing dumb things to data because they don't care or you think they don't care about data quality, it's because they don't see the value in it. So again, I would argue every one of the major problems that we face in the world of data is a function of the fact we cannot tell how much value we deliver. So let's hire somebody specifically to do that. Let's hire somebody called a value engineer. At Profisee, we have one. His name's Lawrence. He's awesome. You could have a Lawrence too. They're out there. I've worked with some amazing value engineers. If you're on Marion, that's for you. I don't know if you are, you aren't. But I've worked with some amazing value engineers. They're out there. They're people that know this stuff quite well. Maybe they have a title more of like pricing, a pricing optimization, but that's another angle here. So another great thing about a value engineer is not only would that person be sitting at the beginning, I suspect hardwired sitting right next to a CDO right at the beginning, but not only would that person be helping the CDO do budgeting, do forecasting, not only would that person be helping the CDO to be able to build the business cases to get funding to do all of this stuff, right? You eventually want to build this organization out, the value engineering organization. I would say that would become its own thing in time. But not only is that person helping to justify investments and everything over on the left-hand side of the screen, they're also helping you become more product driven. Imagine a world where there's a price tag on all of the products you offer. Imagine a world where you are product driven. Imagine a world where you widely and aggressively and happily embrace data products. I think the idea of data products is very real when you overlay all the things in the box on the right-hand side. A data product as a shareable, discoverable, scalable unit of work that is really built to allow the data engineering function to scale, I would argue doesn't add a ton of value. But a data product that has been built for a specific customer need, a data product that has a specific value associated to it, a data product that has a life cycle that is being managed by a product manager, that's got value. but the value needs to be measured. Can you imagine if you went into a grocery store and everything on the shelf, when you went to go look at the price of it, it said, I don't know. Because that's basically what we do in the data function, right? We don't put prices on anything. We don't put value on anything. We don't put cost, right? So value is a coin, and it has two sides. One side is cost. The other side is benefit. Cost benefit. That's the value equation, right? We don't do any of that in the data and analytics world. So my point here is that a value engineer, this is the number one critical hire for data and analytics function this year and every year going forward. If you don't do it, we need to do it. So it's a growing area for sure. And it's certainly something not easily automated by AI either. So this is an area where I think there's a massive area for growth. It's something that I absolutely positively recommend we need to focus more of in the data and analytics space. Every major problem we have is because we cannot justify the benefit that we drive to organizations. Every one of the major ones. As a consultant, I've just seen it over and over and over again. So let's hire a value engineer. Can you develop that person? Do you need to hire? Can you take a business analyst maybe and make them a value engineer? Can you take maybe somebody out of a product role or a marketing role and make them a value engineer? Maybe, but I think this is a specific hire. I think it's a specific hire. So, anybody have any questions? Taking a break. Hi, Tim. Glad you could join. Anurag, glad you could join as well. Good to see everybody. Kayla, how many folks do we have on LinkedIn? Question mark. So as I do these events, I'm doing them through a separate video platform, and I lack a lot of visibility. Oh, thank you. Lack a lot of visibility back through LinkedIn. I'm kind of in a bit of a vacuum here. But anyway, so that's value engineering. I would absolutely positively be focused on value engineering, as you could already tell. What would be number two most critical hire here? Boy, well, product managers. I think I would be hiring a product manager because you could fold in business analysis into a product management function. So any product manager worth their salt will be very good at working directly with customers to understanding customer needs, understanding requirements, building and managing products that are designed to meet customer needs. That's what products do. They solve problems for customers, whether those customers are internal or external. So I don't really get too hung up on internal versus external when I use the word customer. I will use the word customer, and I'm going to use it a lot more to really kind of signify anybody that could be using data, whether that customer is sitting in your marketing organization, your finance organization, or maybe it's somebody that you're selling data or a data product to outside your organization. Both are valid use cases. Product managers are very good at understanding needs. I would argue that is their core. That is kind of like their core differentiating function. Product managers are very, very, very good at watching customers, understanding customers, discerning data related to customers' usage of things, understanding problems, and then translating those problems, those opportunities. Problems and opportunities is the same thing, just a different side of the coin. One's a negative side, the other's a positive. Half full, half empty. Problems, opportunities. Product managers are very good at looking at those things and saying, aha, this is what we need to do in order to solve for that problem and deliver value to them and to us. Create a win-win. That's what product managers are very, very good at. So they're natural problem solvers. They are natural analysts. They are very good at interacting with end users / customers, meaning AKA human beings, right? They're very good at what I would call discernment, of being able to listen, right? And understand and take that information and synthesize it into something that could be actionable, AKA requirements, right? So whether that requirement is for a dashboard, whether it's for a data science model, maybe the requirement is for a data marketplace, right? I could go on. There's a lot of different types of data products that you could build. Maybe the product is even an API. right? Maybe the product is a brand new field of data we don't have today. I could go on, but product managers are very good at working with people. So I've got two roles here, product management and business analysis. But again, if we're kind of being lean, taking an agile approach here, I would say hire a product manager and then over time, separate business analysis from product management. But if there was only one that you would do, I would hire a product manager. Kunal's got questions. Oh, this is good. Let's focus on the questions. Are there certain criteria or examples for where the org needs to be in their maturity to decide when to hire a value engineer? No, I would do it now. Like now. and for pretty much any size data organization. Could you maybe matrix somebody out of a finance role? The closest to this role, I would argue for a lot of companies, the closest is either in two places. The people who are already doing what I'm calling value engineering are in one of two places, mostly, not exclusively, but mostly. One, they're doing a pricing function as a part of a product marketing role within your marketing organization, or maybe your product organization, but somebody who is doing pricing, right? Pricing people are looking at two things. They're looking at cost, right? What does it cost to make something, which is something we need to do. We have in data, we need to do that. We need to understand our cost basis. Most don't really. And pricing people are also looking at the market side, on the demand side. So again, supply demand, another kind of coin metaphor here, but they're looking at and on the demand side and things like competitive forces and other things. But people who do pricing, I would say, are kind of already hardwired for value engineering, and they tend to be in product marketing or product organizations today. The other place where this role kind of already lives is with, I would argue, in a financial planning and analysis type role, typically in a CFO organization. So the people who are doing budgeting, the people who are the kind of spreadsheet experts who once a year, every year, are the ones that are going out there and trying to understand how much are we spending on stuff and how much do we expect to make on stuff. Very technical terms, stuff. I would say it's a little farther away from a traditional value engineer, but the competencies are still there, which is needing to understand at a high level cost basis of things and needing to understand at a high level what the demand side is, what we could make by meeting certain market needs or selling more products or on and on. So those roles exist today in some organizations. So you could maybe make a case to say, hey, FP&A, financial planning analysis, hey, CFO, or hey, chief product officer, I want 50% of that person's time and I'm willing to pay you for it. Could you do that? Maybe. Not optimal. I can pretty much tell you, based on my experience, if you are a data and analytics function of any size, I would say if you were a $100 million company or more, no hard line here, but you're probably spending enough on data and analytics that you could easily justify one FTE who's only focused on value engineering. Because again, how much benefit do we get out of data quality? How much benefit do we get from governance? How often are people using our dashboards? And how is that driving decisions that are driving dollars for the company? These are the things we need to better understand. And I would argue you could do that now in 99% of data and analytics functions. So great question, Kunal. Thank you for asking it. Rodney, what skills are you saying we need for a value engineer? Oh, so I just kind of, I riffed off some of them in my last rant. It's again, boy, I keep coming back to the coin metaphor today. I don't know why. Supply, demand, cost, benefit. How much is it? Like you're talking about an analytical person. You're talking about somebody who may be more of a finance background, right? Maybe more of a product management background, because product managers tend to do this as well. This is a competency of a product manager. But really kind of the people who do this really, really well, I would say have a bit of a finance background or budgeting or accounting background, but are very good at understanding the drivers of cost and the drivers of demand, right? And are good at coming up when building models. In this case, what do I mean by model? I mean, it doesn't need to be like an AI model. We're just talking about, here are the 5 major drivers of cost, and here are the 5 major drivers of demand, right? And, if you were selling products, that could include, competitive forces, it could include macro forces and other things, but they tend to be maybe economics backgrounds, economics grads, finance grads, accounting grads, maybe. But they tend to be very good at numbers. They tend to be the experts at Excel. They tend to be the people historically who are very good at budgeting. But I'm telling you, there is slowly an evolving unique competency here where people actually, if you do a search on LinkedIn on value engineers, you'll find people that do this and do it for a living. Pricing is another area where I think there's a great natural fit there. Hi, Zarna. Question: our firm sees CRM and data as one the same. Do you put CRM as a product line in this diagram? No. Because I do separate CRM as an internal product versus the data generated by a CRM that would fall under what you're looking at on the screen. And I know that sounds like a little bit of a hair split, but it's really kind of the dividing line between systems, infrastructure, and data. CIO, CDO. So, CRM, believe it or not, I was a product manager of a CRM. I was responsible for deploying Salesforce.com in 1997. Yes, folks, Salesforce.com existed in 1997. Isn't that crazy? More than 25 years ago. And I was a product manager for it and the deployment of it. So I think, you could make a case that even internal systems like a CRM or an ERP or a procure-to-pay system or an HR system should have a product manager who is responsible for enhancements to that product, additions to that product, managing a backlog. So, for example, in the case of a CRM, salespeople want some new field added, right? Or they want some new capability, or they want some new reports added to Salesforce or to Dynamics or whatever you're using for CRM. I think there's a unique role there for a product manager. That person would probably not sit in this organization. That product manager would sit generally in a CIO organization. The product managers I'm talking about here would be for the data, specifically for the data, not the systems themselves. Now, if you had a requirement for a new report, some new enabling new data, maybe you wanted to build an AI model that was heavily reliant on CRM data, and you looked at the data and it's just not there, or you needed to change the capabilities of the CRM somehow, this product manager, the one on the screen, would go to the product manager who owned the infrastructure and say, hey, I've got a requirement for you. And along the way, they would probably chat with their value engineer to say, hey, listen, what do you think we could get out of adding this field to Salesforce or adding this new capability to Salesforce? I'm going to make a request for resources to change our CRM. What's the benefit going to be? Because that's the first thing that CRM product manager is going to ask. Oh, okay. You want something new? When do you want it? And why? What's the business benefit? So I don't see CRM as a separate product line in this diagram per se, other than the data. Now, you could make the product managers on the right-hand side, how you organize them. Could you organize them by domain? I think that would be a very meshy, meaning data meshy. That would be a meshy way to do it, right? Where you had a product manager. Okay, I'll use it. Product owner. I don't like that word, but whatever. Where you had a product manager that was hardline to the CDO, but dotted line into the domain. Where you could have a product manager in, let's just say, CRM typically is for sales and marketing. So you could have a data product manager, data product owner, sitting in a sales and management function that was responsible for all the data products consumed within that organization. So yeah, you could certainly have a kind of decentralized or federated approach to the product managers. I think that maybe that's kind of what you're asking. Yes, you certainly could. You could have, I would argue there is still a role for some sort of centralized overlay here, particularly when it comes to master data. This is my biggest problem with the mesh, by the way, is saying, oh, okay, hey, domain, just knock yourself out. Go build your own reports, do whatever you want to do from an analytics perspective. It's all about domain centricity. Yay, mesh. But when you start doing things and tinkering with things and changing customer definitions to best meet the needs of, for example, sales and marketing, what about finance that is also heavily leveraging customer data? Because that data just doesn't live in the CRM alone. it goes from the CRM to the ERP. The minute you write that contract, that data needs to move from the CRM to the ERP. And now all of a sudden your definitions don't align. That's a problem. So I would argue there is a functional role, right? And there's also a cross-functional role. So really what you're looking at on the screen is a little bit more of a cross-functional view, I would argue. But thanks for the question, Kunal. That wasn't Kunal, that was Zarna. My apologies. Thank you, Zarna, for the question. Another question from Kunal. Have you come across methods for measuring value for risk prevention? For example, with data quality, are you saving X dollars from a potential risk of a bad decision using bad data? How do you quantify a value of something that hasn't occurred? Future penalties, future. Such a wonderful question. The short answer is yes. I have come across methods for measuring value for risk prevention. I would argue there are a whole bunch of people working for insurance companies that's all they do for a living. So there are the banks, insurance companies, anybody in a any large financial services company has got ways to manage and measure when it comes to risk prevention, right? Another way to look at this would be potentially opportunity cost. And I know you were looking at it through a risk lens, Kunal, but one way of valuing data could be through the lens of doing nothing, right? Sounds a little counterintuitive, but what's the cost of doing nothing, right? If we continue with the status quo and don't do anything, don't change the data, don't govern the data, don't update our governance policies, whatever it is, right? What will that end up costing the business, right? What's the delta there? So there are a lot of different ways to go about understanding value, right? So, generally 3, some people would argue there's 4. I would just generally argue high level, there's 3, increasing revenue, lowering costs, mitigating risk. And you need to figure out how to measure across all 3, but different measures are going to be more effective for different functions, right? A CFO will tend to be a little more focused on top line. A COO will be focused on bottom line, right? A CISO is going to be focused on those risk metrics, right? CFO will care about risk metrics as well. But this is what a value engineer would do for a living. So are there models out there? There absolutely are models out there. Are they perfect? Nope, certainly not. But how do you model something that hasn't occurred? Well, you look at historical data. What you're just talking about, how do you model something that hasn't occurred, is what an actuary does in an insurance company. But I would argue it's exactly what a lot of data scientists do when they're trying to model future behavior of anything, right? I mean, like propensity to buy. Okay. Like that's a standard model that data scientists are working on at a lot of companies, right? How much stuff will people buy in the future, right? That's a future prediction. It's a very common one. And how would we do that? Well, we look at past performance, right? We look at the past, but we also look into the future. We try to model things like macro forces, economic forces. Who knows? Weather. Like, believe it or not, like a lot of financial services companies have a lot of people who all they focus on is the weather, because they've drawn causal relationships between weather and the stuff they're doing, right? So yes, there are absolutely ways to model this stuff, right? That includes modeling the impact of data. If we can build models that guess how much stuff we're going to sell, right? Within probability bands, of course, it's not going to be perfect, right? All these models, and this is a way that data and analytics is changing, by the way. We're going from a very deterministic world to a probabilistic world where there's going to be confidence bands, right? But this is the world of data science. This is the world that we're going to. This is the world of AI, by the way. So can we do it? Yes. Are there models? Yes. Are there examples of how other use cases or other scenarios where companies are doing this today? Yeah, absolutely. So does that mean, am I saying that your value engineer needs to, be an actuary, right? No, because one, that's going to cost you way too much money. And most of the actuaries that I know that just really kind of, they tend to crunch on the math and just really love the math and are less focused on some of the customer interaction stuff. So, but there are models out there, lots of them. And if we can predict things like when we're going to run out of raw materials for our production line, or whether a customer is going to buy something or not in the future, I would argue we most certainly can model the impact of better data. It's a big thing for me. You can tell. Hey, Jason Taylor, good to see you, buddy. You are taking a break from the mean streets to join us here on the mean streets of LinkedIn. Nice to see you as always. Assuming you are the same Jason Taylor that I'm talking about. Jason and I are friends. How is the landscape of connecting data changing? Is everyone still trying to create golden records, or are there different dynamics as to people rush to embrace Gen AI and now realize how bad their underlying data quality fundamentals are? Well, at least you gave me an easy question, Jason. I'm joking entirely. But anyhow, is the landscape changing? Yes. Is it changing fast enough? No. Do people fully understand and appreciate how it needs to change? Absolutely not. Yeah. And what do I mean by connecting data? Is it changing? Yes, it's most certainly changing. And historically, the way we connected, and I will just use the phrase loosely, connected. This could be an ETL process or a data mapping process. This could be entity resolution, right? Matching, right? And let's use a matching use case because I know that's near and dear to your heart, Jason. But let's use a matching use case. I think that one's probably the most relevant here. Is that changing? Is how we match Acme Incorporated to Acme Inc. or Acme LLC? Is how we match those two things together? Is that changing? Yes, it absolutely is, but it's not changing very fast, and it's not changing as quickly as I think it needs to. I see a very bright future here and a very different future of how we've historically done things. Historically, we looked at a bunch of attributes of that record, right? We looked at Acme Inc. and maybe a half a dozen attributes: address, phone number, website, who knows? And I'm just looking at a B2B use case here, but a B2C use case was we just generally looked at email addresses, right? And took a very deterministic approach to matching things. But we would look at attributes of that record. The attributes we looked at were attributes that were defined by a human. Were attributes that a human said, oh, this is important to me, or I think it's important, or I think it is highly deterministic of a match. It's going to make the best match. When I look at these 5 things: name, address, city, state, zip, phone number, URL, maybe these 6 things, if all of these are the same, then I'm pretty sure that these things are the same. Now, that's what needs to change. And I don't see that fundamentally changing, because those things, that makes sense. But how things are going to change is that we're going to use AI in order to look at huge swaths of data. We're going to run knowledge graphs. We're going to do a whole bunch of other stuff to pre-process and pre-analyze data to understand relationships that exist between objects that we didn't know about, right? Because we didn't know about them because we had a human being saying these 6 things matter, right? What AI will do is AI could say to us, aha, I ran a knowledge graph here, and I ran a bunch of advanced analytics on top of the graph. I did a few other things. Maybe I even bounced it a few times back and forth against an LLM to add a little bit more insight, right? Context. And lo and behold, these 2 additional fields that are not part of your matching criteria are highly deterministic of a correlation between them, right? Will drastically help improve your matching capability. So that's one way that it's going to change. That's one way, is you're going to have AI, for lack of a better word, augment at match process to make it a lot better by doing a lot of advanced analytics that have historically happened outside of an MDM hub. This is going to be a huge challenge, right? This is going to be a huge challenge because MDM providers have said, oh, well, bring in the least amount of data, bring it into the hub, bring those 6 fields into the hub so we can crank it through our matching algorithm. But that limited the amount of data that you had persisted in a hub. It made the hub more efficient, right? Because you're only processing a certain amount of data, but it's still fairly computationally intense because you've got to look across multiple variables, multiple drivers of match and assign weights across all of them. So still fairly computationally intense. Now I'm talking about looking across X number of variables. That's only really going to happen efficiently outside of an MDM hub, I would argue, within a cloud-based infrastructure where that MDM is deeply integrated into some sort of analytics platform that maybe you call the data fabric, maybe. But where MDM and that data and analytics platform are deeply integrated and sharing insights back and forth. This is something that Profisee has been working on with Microsoft for a while now. It's most certainly where I see the market going. So yes, things are absolutely changing. The biggest change is that we're going to use AI to tell us what matters from a match perspective, and we're going to slowly break away from this human-driven match, and that does actually infer as well as modeling. Right? Historically, humans modeled things based off of what we thought was important, based off of the characteristics that we thought uniquely identified a customer, and we'd model the relationships as well, the joins across tables based on things that we thought were important, or largely based off of how data was structured in business applications, right? That's another way things are changing, is that maybe how we've been modeling things as a way of as mimicking how things are modeled in a business application, in an analytics infrastructure, maybe that's not the best way, right? So lots of changes. Dude, I could talk about this stuff for hours, as you know. But thanks for the question. I do appreciate it. Hopefully that makes sense. But, you did have a second aspect to your question. Different dynamics as people rush to embrace Gen AI now realize how bad their underlying data quality fundamentals are. Oh, boy. Well, so check out my LinkedIn post today. I just made a post. I said there's an elephant in the room. There's an AI governance elephant in the room, an AI data governance elephant in the room. And that is that Gen AI, to create or optimize Gen AI, and what I mean by create is to train a model. And what I mean by optimize is the prompt that you use to get stuff out, right? Prompt, right? So whether you're training or whether you're prompting, or even fine tuning, if you're using an open source model, if you have the ability to fine tune that model, all those processes, training, prompting, fine tuning, all of them are driven by text, not rows and columns, text. That's the governance elephant in the room. Most of that text is totally ungoverned today, right? We're talking about, customer service FAQs that are hanging out on some website that hasn't been updated in 5 years, right? We're talking about like marketing documents that are lurking out on SharePoint servers that nobody updates and nobody manages and nobody has archived, right? When it comes to governance, a lot of the content that is being used to train, right, to train these models is totally ungoverned. The simple fact that OpenAI exists, right? If you would ask a company 6 months ago, or a year ago, if you would have asked a company and you would have said, "Oh, hey, there's this entity out there called OpenAI that's going to take every nugget of data you've ever published to the web ever, and they're going to take it and they're going to build models that could potentially automate everything you do for a living," would you allow that? I think every company would have said, "Heck no! Why would I do that?" Right? First of all, that's my IP, right? But the simple fact that it could be done is, to me, a hole in a governance policy, right? Like that wasn't even considered, right? Like, are we going to expose all this data externally? Like way back in the day, we tried to put some basic controls around what you could do from like kind of like a crawling perspective, or what bots could do to your web content. But like from the perspective of like legit enterprise class governance policies, right? They just don't exist for that data. And the fact that LLMs exist is a testament to that. So that's how things are changing, is that we've got all this data used for Gen AI. It's all sitting there in text, totally unstructured, largely ungoverned, I would argue. Largely ungoverned. More questions. Thanks, Jason. As always, glad you could make it. I was focused on that. Hopping back to chat. Jason and Zarna saying hi. Great. MDM is inherently centralized. Yes. Okay. Yeah. I dislike the phrase MDM is inherently centralized. I'm looking at your comments, some of the comments that many can't see. Jason made the comment that MDM is inherently centralized. I get it. I mean, I understand. MDM is about shared data. So I would, instead of saying centralized, I would say MDM is inherently cross-functional. Okay. Like I think that is a more friendly, less incendiary way of expressing the value of MDM. Right. When you say centralized, that causes a bit of an antibody response to people, particularly, IT people and data and analytics people like centralized. Oh, that's bad. It's bad. But when you say, well, MDM is cross-functional, you're like, oh, okay. Right. I get it. Right. It's for shared data that needs common rules, common quality standards, common meaning, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, I get the intent behind the statement that MDM is inherently centralized, but getting back to the marketing role, I think we could use better words. I mean, man, some of the words we use just are not very good. Like data literacy, come on. Like we could use better words. And I think marketing people can help with that. It sounds a little hair splitty, but this stuff matters, right? How we market and how we express things, you could call that data storytelling, maybe. But better marketing, that's part of the data and analytics function of the future. Why don't I stop sharing? You've been looking at my PowerPoint long enough. Now you could get to see all of this. But yeah, we got to do better marketing. Real-time chat here, Jason. I love it. That's awesome. Coexistence, Kunal. Yeah, coexistence. Hard, but doable. Oh, yeah. I'm not saying centralized is bad. Okay, cool. Yeah. Yes, we agree. Okay, cool. And we're heavily pedantic as an industry. Jason made a point that we're heavily pedantic. Oh boy, are we ever? I built a model. This is kind of meta, right? Like I'm so pedantic that I build a pedantic model to express how pedantic we are, which is kind of funny. I called it the semantic pedanticism feedback loop. And ironically, the more pedantic we are, the more pedantic we become, because we need to invent new things in order to bring the sizzle and shine, to make people renew subscriptions or to make people think that there's some new thing in the world of data and analytics when there really isn't. So we create new words all the time when we don't need to. It's an interesting phenomenon, and then analysts pile on and then vendors pile on, and we just create all these new words and we're like, hey, it's a new thing. Data products, it's a new thing. Yeah, not really. Data alphabet soup. Yep, couldn't agree more, Kayla. Am I blaming Gartner? Partially. I mean, think about it. And don't get me wrong, I love that company. Great value, great company, great insights. But think about it. If you are selling a recurring subscription to something, are you going to renew your subscription if all the insights are evergreen, right? If nothing ever changed about governance, about data management, about MDM, about data quality, about anything, if nothing ever changed, I'd buy one subscription and then I would never need another one. So, I mean, and if you're building SaaS software, right, you keep adding new features and new functions. It makes total sense. I want more goodies. I want new things. But when it comes to best practices and insights, a good chunk of what we do in data and analytics, frankly, doesn't change that much. I would argue needs to change a lot more. Separate conversation, separate live event. But I think when it comes to changing, I think there are motivators in our industry that naturally exist and are exacerbated by subscription-based pricing models, where there's a certain incentive to create new stuff because people like new stuff. I like new stuff. I like shiny things, right? I'm as guilty as the next person. I like shiny things. So, yeah. Kunal recently fell out of a chair recently looking up the definition of reverse ETL. Would that be LTE? Ba-dum-bum. Reverse ETL, LTE. So for some of you on LinkedIn, I'm looking at comments that are coming through our video platform. So you may be saying, what is he doing? Is he like he's existing in an alternative universe? Well, I kind of am, because we have a separate video platform where there's comments coming through that video platform. Just want to make sure that I'm touching on all the questions. I touched on that, touched on that, touched on that. I think I got to all of them. Very cool. Just making sure, saying hi to everybody that I didn't say hi to. Hi, Chrisane. Glad you could make it. Awesome. So I do see the data and analytics function of the future. It necessarily needs to change because we need to change. I would argue, putting aside my last little rant about making new stuff when we don't need to make new stuff, there absolutely positively are huge opportunities, and I would say huge requirements for us to approach things differently. Biggest one, value engineering, number one. Number two, product management. Number three, I didn't get to this when we were talking about this before, is how we interact with our customers. I had a title on the org chart titled business analyst. I think that doesn't go too far. I think that doesn't go far enough in explaining what you want from that role. I think the better way to title that role would be business consultant, right? I think we have a huge opportunity we could be evangelists for AI within our organization. That was evangelism is another role that I kind of sprinkled onto the org chart. But if you transition somebody from what you would call a business analyst, right? I would argue that is kind of an inbound function where, people say they want something and then you analyze the need. What we need to become, using more sales parlance, is more outbound. We need to go into the business. We need to sit down and understand the business. We need to evangelize the value of AI. We need to evangelize the benefits of using better data management, better data quality, better data governance. We need to proactively do those things as a part of what I would argue is a business consulting function. We need to become the consultants to our business. We need the ability to sit down and say, hey, did you know that I could reduce your inventory cost by 3% if we just do these three or four things a little bit differently? Or have you considered the use of an AI copilot in order to help you make better decisions about procurement? I could go on, right? But I think we've got a real opportunity to take more of a consulting stance within our business, right? If it really is all about the data, and if it really is about becoming more of a data-driven culture, well, the best way to do, well, not the best way, a way, and I would argue an important way to do that is to evangelize, to sell the benefit of data to the organization. Now, selling just on glitz isn't going to work. You need to have that data that the value engineer is going to produce for you. You need to have the data about the benefit that we're driving for the organization. But I would argue that we need to become more consulting-like in our approach. Now, again, you could argue, hey, Malcolm, that sounds expensive. How in the world am I going to justify these people? Start with that value engineer. If you can build data, create data that says, aha, if we just tweak our approach to how we evaluate new suppliers, we can speed the process up by 20%. Now, your business partners are looking at this stuff already, but they probably don't know about all the data that's available to them. They probably don't know about how they could be leveraging AI. A lot of people see AI and they're like, oh man, job elimination. We're going to wait on that one. We're just going to wait. We're going to sit this one out. We're going to wait. We're not going to press on anything on AI. But if you can say, hey, we could be more efficient. We can make you more sales commissions, salespeople. Procurement people, we can reduce our supply chain risk. Hey, product people, we can speed up the manufacturing process. And we know this because we've looked at this. I've worked with my value engineer. I've worked with my data science cohort. We've built some models. We've got some ideas about how to improve the business. That's what we need to try to get to. Now, a lot of this work, probably we don't want to be going out there and working on spec all the time, on speculation and just doing work for work's sake. But the good news is that we know the things that matter the most, right? This is why I'm kind of pro MDM, right? We know customer data makes a difference. We know when we improve things related to customer data or product data or asset data or material data, we know there's going to be a benefit there. So yeah, become more of a business consultant internally. Do better project management. That was the last thing I wanted to mention. Do better project management. Today, most CDO organizations are prioritizing based on gut. Fact, making decisions on gut. When it comes to being data driven, we talk a big game. We want everybody else to be data driven. But when it comes to using data to make decisions about how we prioritize, generally it's squeaky wheel. Not exclusively. Not exclusively. Some companies are doing business cases, and hooray for you. You're a shining light out there. But honestly, often it's just squeaky wheel. Whoever screams the loudest for our attention in the data function, that's the last thing from being data driven, folks. We need to become data driven. The way to become data driven internally is to be able to say, I'm working on project A because it drives $1 million of revenue, and project B only drives $500,000. So I'm going to focus on A. Anybody got a problem with that? That's the place we need to get to. So with that, it's the top of the hour. It is now noon here on the East Coast. Happy Friday, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm going to find a way to spread the word about the merch. Man, my video went to, this video platform drives me nuts. Hey, I'll see you all again in another month or in another couple of weeks, maybe through a CDO Matters episode. Check me out on LinkedIn. Please subscribe to the CDO Matters podcast if you have not otherwise done so. I'll talk to y'all in another month. Have a great weekend. Thanks for coming out.